I, 29, F, was married to a man who lived a life that was not entirely his own. My husband, Mark, was the product of immense expectation. His parents were wealthy. They were respected in their community. They valued appearances above all else. Mark was their only son, their project, their legacy. He worked for his father's company, lived in a house his father helped us buy, and drove a car his father had co-signed for. Our lives were comfortable, but they felt borrowed. I often felt like I was an accessory, another piece of the perfect picture they were painting. A suitable wife for their perfect son. Mark played his part well. He was charming. He was ambitious. He said all the right things. He told me he loved me every day. He held my hand at family dinners and praised my cooking to his mother. But there was a distance in his eyes, a hollowness in his touch that I had learned to ignore. I told myself it was the pressure, the weight of his family's name, the stress of his demanding job. I made excuses for him because I loved him and because admitting the truth would have meant admitting our entire life was a carefully constructed lie. The first crack in that construction appeared on a Tuesday. It was small, almost insignificant. A charge on our joint credit card statement. A hotel bar, 200 miles away. It was for a small amount, just 2 drinks. But Mark was supposed to be in a different city for a conference. A city in the opposite direction. When I asked him about it, his response was smooth. Too smooth. He said he must have used the wrong card. He said it was from a trip last month that he had forgotten to expense. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and told me not to worry my pretty little head about it. That phrase, pretty little head, was a new one. It was condescending. It was dismissive. It made a cold knot form in my stomach. I knew he was lying. I did not know why, but the certainty of it was absolute. It was in the way his eyes did not quite meet mine. It was in the way his hand tightened on his phone when he thought I was not looking. I let it go. I told him I understood. But I did not. I felt a switch flip inside me. The part of me that made excuses went quiet. A different part, a colder and more observant part, took over. I started watching. I started listening. I started paying attention to the small details I had been so willing to overlook. His phone, which used to lie casually on the nightstand, was now always screened down. He started taking calls in the other room, closing the door behind him. He said they were work calls, late-night clients. His business trips became more frequent. His explanations for his whereabouts became more elaborate, filled with unnecessary details that sounded rehearsed. I never challenged him. I just nodded and smiled. I played the part of the trusting wife. Inside, I was collecting these small inconsistencies, these tiny betrayals. Each one was a stone, and I was building a wall around my heart. I knew a storm was coming. I did not know what it would look like, but I knew I needed to be ready. My best friend, Sarah, 29, F, saw the change in me. We had been friends since college, and she could read me like no one else. We met for coffee one afternoon, and she looked at me with concern. "You seem quiet lately," she said. "Is everything okay with you and Mark?" I hesitated. Voicing my suspicions would make them real. It would turn this cold fear into a concrete problem. "I am not sure," I said finally. "Something feels off." "Off how?" she asked, her voice gentle. I told her about the credit card charge. I told her about the phone calls. I told her about the distance in his eyes. I expected her to tell me I was being paranoid. I expected her to defend Mark. But she did not. She just listened. When I was done, she reached across the table and took my hand. "You trust your gut," she said. "It has never steered you wrong before." Her validation was a relief. It made me feel less like I was going crazy and more like I was waking up. I was not being paranoid. I was being observant. And what I was observing was the slow, painful unraveling of my marriage. The final piece of proof came in an email. Mark was careless. He had been using our home computer to book his trips, and he had forgotten to log out of his personal email account. I was not snooping. I was looking for a recipe I had saved, and his inbox was just there. Open. Displayed on the screen. The subject line was, Our weekend getaway, it was not from a travel agency. It was from a woman named Jenna. I knew Jenna. She was a junior associate at his father's firm. She was young, ambitious, and beautiful. I had met her at a company holiday party. Mark had introduced her as a promising new talent. I remembered how she had looked at him. I remembered how he had smiled at her. At the time, I had dismissed it as professional admiration. Now I saw it for what it was. I opened the email. My hands were shaking. The message was short, but it destroyed my world. Can't wait to have you all to myself. The Grand Hotel, room 412. See you Friday. It was signed with a single J. Friday was 2 days away. Friday was the day Mark was supposed to be leaving for a management retreat in the mountains. The hotel was not in the mountains. It was downtown, less than 30 minutes from her house. The lie was so blatant, so audacious. He was not even trying to hide it well. He was counting on me not to look. He was counting on my trust, a trust he had been systematically destroying for months. I closed the laptop. I sat there in the quiet of our living room, the room we had picked out furniture for together, the room where we had hosted family Christmases. The silence was deafening. The life I thought I had was a sham. The man I thought I knew was a stranger. The love I thought we shared was a lie. The hurt was a physical thing. It was a crushing weight on my chest, a fire in my veins. But underneath the hurt, something else was stirring. It was anger. A cold, clear, and focused anger. He was not just going to get away with this. He was not just going to break my heart and walk away unscathed. He had underestimated me. He had mistaken my kindness for weakness. He thought I was just a pretty head, incapable of anything more than worrying. He was about to find out how wrong he was. I did not cry. I did not scream. I went to my purse and took out my wallet. I found an old hotel key card from a trip I had taken with Sarah last year. It was a generic plastic card, indistinguishable from any other. I put it in my pocket. I did not have a full plan yet, but I had the beginning of one. I had the anger, and I had the key. The next 2 days were a blur of performance. I was the perfect wife. I helped Mark pack for his retreat. I asked him about the agenda. I told him I would miss him. He lapped it up. He was smug, confident in his deception. He had no idea he was packing for the last day of his life as he knew it. Will you be able to call? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. Probably not much service up there, he said, not looking at me. You know how the mountains are. Of course, I said. Just be safe. He kissed me goodbye on Friday morning. It felt like being kissed by a ghost. His lips were cold. His touch was meaningless. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I went into action. I called his mother. My hands were steady. My voice was calm. I had rehearsed this call in my head a dozen times. Hello, Eleanor, I said, using her first name, which I knew she preferred. It is Clara. Clara, dear, she said, her voice warm. How are you? I am a little worried, actually, I said, injecting a note of concern into my voice. It is about Mark. Her tone shifted immediately. Is he all right? What is wrong? He is fine physically, I said. But he has been under so much pressure at work. He is so desperate to impress his father. He has been working on a new business proposal, a big one. He has poured everything into it. Yes, he mentioned something about a new venture, she said, her interest piqued. Well, he has it all ready, I said. He has a presentation set up. He wanted to surprise you and Mr. Davison. He booked a room at the Grand Hotel to use their conference facilities. He is there right now, preparing. He was too nervous to call you himself, but I think he could really use your support. He wanted it to be perfect. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the gears turning in her head. Her son, her brilliant son, working so hard to make his father proud. It was the perfect bait. The Grand Hotel? She asked. Where is he? Room 412, I said. He told me he would be there all evening, rehearsing his pitch. Well, of course we will go, she said, her voice filled with maternal pride. His father will be so pleased. Thank you for telling me, Clara. You are such a good wife to him. I just want to see him succeed, I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. He said he would be ready around 9 o'clock. He wanted to make sure everything was perfect. We will be there, she promised. 9 o'clock. Room 412-inch. I hung up the phone. The first part of my plan was in motion. Now for the hard part. I drove to the Grand Hotel. I did not have a reservation. I was not a guest. I was an intruder. I sat in my car in the parking garage, my heart pounding in my chest. I watched the entrance. I waited. For what, I was not sure. A sign? A moment of weakness? An opportunity? Around 7 o'clock, I saw them. Mark and Jenna. They were walking out of the hotel restaurant laughing. He had his arm around her. She was looking up at him with an expression of pure adoration. The sight of them together was a fresh stab of pain. But it also hardened my resolve. This was real. This was happening. And I was going to end it. They walked towards the main entrance, heading out for a walk. This was my chance. I got out of my car and walked into the hotel lobby. It was busy, filled with people checking in, meeting for drinks, heading to their rooms. I blended in. I walked over to the elevators, my eyes scanning the crowd. I needed to get to the 4th floor. I needed to get to room 412. But I could not just walk in. I needed a way to make my presence there seem natural if I was caught. I walked over to the hotel bar, the same one from the credit card receipt. I sat at a small table in the corner, a table that had a clear view of the elevator bank. I ordered a glass of water. I nursed it for what felt like an eternity. My leg was bouncing under the table. My palms were sweating. Every time the elevator doors opened, I flinched. Finally, I saw them again. They were coming back inside, still smiling, still wrapped up in their own little world. They walked past the bar, heading for the elevators. Mark was fumbling in his coat pocket for the keycard. This was it. It was now or never. I stood up and walked towards them, my path set to intercept them just before they reached the elevator. I kept my head down, pretending to be looking at my phone. I timed it perfectly. I bumped into him, hard enough to make him stumble. "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry," I said, my voice full of fake surprise. I looked up, my eyes widening as if I had just recognized him. "Mark, what are you doing here?" His face went pale. The smile vanished. He looked at me, then at Jenna, then back at me.
He was speechless.
"Clara," he stammered.
What? How?
"I was meeting a friend for a drink," I said, gesturing vaguely towards the bar. "She just canceled." What a crazy coincidence. Jenna was looking between us, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. She knew who I was. During the moment of chaos, his coat pocket was open. His hand had dropped the keycard when I bumped him. It was on the floor. In the split second that he was flustered, trying to process my appearance, I bent down. "You dropped this," I said, picking it up. My other hand, the one holding the old, useless keycard from my pocket, was a blur. In one swift motion, I palmed his keycard and held out the fake one. "Here you go." He took it without looking. His mind was racing, trying to come up with a lie big enough to cover this. "Thanks," he muttered. He was still staring at me, his eyes wide with panic. "Well, I should get going," I said, my voice bright and cheerful. "It was interesting seeing you both. Have a good night." I turned and walked away without looking back. I could feel his eyes on my back. I did not stop until I was outside, my lungs burning for air. I leaned against the cold brick of the building, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked down at my hand. There it was. Room 412. I had his key. I had his secret. And in less than an hour, his parents would be knocking on that door. I went back to my car. I sat in the driver's seat, the keycard clutched in my hand. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, heavy certainty. I had crossed a line. There was no going back to the woman I was yesterday. The trusting wife. The woman who made excuses. She was gone. In her place was someone I barely recognized. Someone who was capable of this level of calculation, of this kind of cold-blooded revenge. I was not sure if I liked this new person, but I knew she was a survivor. I thought about what I should do next. I had the key. I could go up to the room. I could wait for them there. But that felt too confrontational. Too messy. My plan was more elegant than that. It was about exposure, not a screaming match in a hotel hallway. But there was something else I needed. More leverage. The affair was one thing, but I had a feeling it was not the only secret Mark was keeping. His carelessness with the email suggested a deeper arrogance, a belief that he was untouchable. People like that, they leave other trails. I had the key. I had access. I waited for 20 minutes. It was long enough for them to have gone back to their room, found the fake key did not work, gone down to the front desk to get a new one and settled back in. They would be feeling flustered, but relieved. They would think they had narrowly avoided disaster. They would think I had believed his inevitable lie about a business meeting with Jenna. They would be complacent. That was when I went back inside. I walked confidently to the elevator, like I belonged there. I rode it up to the 4th floor. The hallway was empty. It was quiet. I walked to room 412. I stood outside the door for a moment listening. I could hear the faint sound of music. I took a deep breath. I slid the keycard into the slot. The light turned green. I opened the door and slipped inside, closing it silently behind me. The room was empty. They were not there. A wave of relief washed over me. They must have gone out again, maybe to get a real dinner after our encounter had spoiled their plans. On the bed, there were 2 suitcases. His and hers. On the desk, there was a laptop, open. And next to it, a leather briefcase. Mark's briefcase. The one his father had given him for his 30th birthday. I went to the briefcase first. It was not locked. Inside, there were files. Business proposals.
Spreadsheets.
And a folder labeled private. My hands trembled as I opened it. It was full of bank statements. Statements from an account I had never seen before. An account in Mark's name only. There were large deposits. And even larger withdrawals. I saw transfers to Jenna's personal account, labeled as consulting fees. I saw charges for expensive jewelry, for weekend trips, for dinners at restaurants I had only dreamed of going to. But the most damning thing was the source of the deposits. They were regular, sizable transfers from his parents' investment portfolio. The portfolio that was supposed to be funding the company's expansion. The money his father had entrusted him with.
He was not just cheating on me.
He was stealing from his own family. He was using their money, the foundation of their legacy, to fund his affair. The scale of his betrayal was breathtaking. It was not just a personal failure, it was a profound professional and familial one. This was what would destroy him. Not the affair, but the money. His parents could forgive infidelity. They had a class of friends where such things were whispered about but ultimately tolerated. But they would never forgive this. This was a betrayal of trust, a betrayal of blood. It was an attack on the very foundation of their world. I took out my phone. I laid the documents out on the desk one by one. I took clear, steady pictures of everything. The bank statements, the transfers to Jenna, the source of the funds from his parents' portfolio. Each photo was a nail in his coffin. I put the documents back exactly as I had found them. I closed the briefcase. I looked around the room. I saw Jenna's suitcase on the bed. On an impulse, I opened it. Inside, nestled among her clothes, was a small, velvet box. I opened it. A diamond necklace. It was new, expensive. I recognized the designer. It was the same one Mark had told me we could not afford when I had pointed it out in a magazine last Christmas. I took a picture of that, too. Then I put it back. I closed the suitcase. I left the room as silently as I had entered. I went back to my car. It was almost 8:30. His parents would be arriving soon. I sat in the dark, my phone in my hand, scrolling through the pictures. The evidence was irrefutable. I had him. Completely and utterly. I sent a text message to Mark. My friend canceled. I am heading home now. Feeling a bit tired.
See you on Sunday.
Love you, the love you, was the final twist of the knife. It was a lie, of course. But it was a lie that would make him feel safe. It would ensure he and Jenna were back in that room when his parents arrived. I did not have to wait long. At 5 minutes to 9, a black sedan pulled into the hotel's valet circle. Mr. and Mrs. Davison stepped out. They looked regal. He was in a tailored suit, she in an elegant dress. They looked proud. They looked excited. They were walking into an ambush, and they had no idea. They thought they were about to witness their son's greatest triumph. They were about to witness his complete and utter ruin. And I was the architect of it all. I watched them walk into the hotel. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a movie. The characters were all playing their parts. The stage was set. The final act was about to begin. I gave them a few minutes to get up to the room. I imagined the scene. They would knock on the door of room 412. Mark, expecting room service or nothing at all, would open it. The shock on his face. The confusion. The dawning realization of the trap. I wondered what he would do. Would he try to lie? Would he try to bluster his way through it? Or would he simply crumble?
I wanted to be there to see it.
I needed to see it. I got out of my car and walked back into the hotel for the last time. I did not go to the 4th floor.
Not yet.
I went back to the bar. I found the same corner table. This time, I ordered a glass of wine. I sat there, sipping it slowly, waiting. I had one more call to make. I pulled out my phone and dialed Mark's sister, Emily. We had always been friendly. She was younger than Mark and kinder. She was not as caught up in their parents' world of appearances. She loved her brother, but she was not blind to his faults. "Clara," she said, sounding surprised to hear from me. "Is everything okay?" "Hi, Emily," I said, my voice low. "I am sorry to bother you. I am worried about Mark." "Worried how?" she asked. "Is it about this new business deal? Dad has been talking about it non-stop. He is so proud." "It is about that," I said, choosing my words carefully. "I think Mark might be in over his head. He has been making some questionable decisions with the company's money." There was a silence on the other end. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice sharp with concern. "I can't get into the details right now," I said. "But your parents are on their way to meet him at the Grand Hotel. I think they're walking into a very bad situation. I just thought you should know." "The Grand Hotel?" she said, confused. "I thought he was on a retreat in the mountains." "That is what he told me, too," I said quietly. The implication hung in the air between us. I did not need to say anything more. Emily was smart. She could connect the dots. "Oh, Mark," she whispered. "What has he done?"
"You might want to be there," I said.
"He is going to need." "Well, I am not sure what he is going to need. But it is not going to be good." "I am on my way," she said and hung up. I put my phone down. I had planted the seeds. With his parents, with his sister. The whole family would now be witness to his downfall. There would be no escape. No way to spin this. No way to talk his way out of it. It would be a complete and total immolation. The thought should have made me feel triumphant. But instead, I just felt cold.
Numb.
This was not just about Mark anymore. It was about an entire family, an entire system of lies and expectations that was about to come crashing down. And I was the one holding the match. The minutes ticked by. 9 o'clock came and went. Then 9:15. I imagined the scene upstairs. The initial shock. The accusations. The denials. The slow, horrifying reveal of the truth. I wondered if he had collapsed yet. The prompt for my revenge, the image that had played in my mind, was of him falling to his knees, his perfect world shattered around him. I stayed in my seat at the bar. I was a spectator now. I had done my part. The rest was up to them. Around 9:30, the elevator doors opened. A small crowd of people came out, and among them I saw her. Mrs. Davison. Eleanor. She was alone. Her face was ashen. Her eyes were red-rimmed. Her elegant composure was gone. She looked broken. She saw me sitting at the table. Our eyes met across the crowded lobby. For a moment, she just stared at me. I could not read her expression. Was it anger? Was it betrayal? Was it gratitude? Then, she started walking towards me. Her steps were slow, unsteady. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the last 30 minutes. She stopped in front of my table. She did not say anything. She just looked at me. I met her gaze. I did not flinch. I was not going to apologize. I was not going to show remorse. I had done what I had to do. You knew, she said finally. Her voice was a hoarse whisper. It was not a question. It was a statement. Yes, I said. I knew. You let us walk into that, she said, her voice trembling. You set him up. He set himself up, I said, my voice quiet but firm. He built that room, Eleanor. He decorated it with his lies. All I did was open the door. She sank into the chair opposite me. She put her head in her hands. I could see her shoulders shaking. She was weeping. Not loud, hysterical sobs, but quiet, desperate, and heartbroken tears. The sight of her, this proud, powerful woman, so completely undone, did not bring me any joy. It just made me feel tired. So incredibly tired. The money, she whispered, looking up at me, her eyes pleading. Is it true? What he did with the money. This was the moment. The final piece of leverage. I could have shown her the pictures on my phone right then and there. But I did not. It was not necessary. My word, backed by the scene she had just witnessed upstairs, was enough. Yes, I said. It is all true. He has been stealing from you for months. To pay for her. For all of this. She let out a small, wounded sound. The sound of a mother's heart breaking. My son, she said, her voice barely audible. My beautiful boy. I did not say anything. There was nothing to say. We sat in silence for a few moments, surrounded by the noise and laughter of the hotel lobby. Two women, connected by the same man, our lives irrevocably shattered by his actions. Then I saw Mr. Davison step out of the elevator. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. He saw his wife sitting with me. He strode over to our table. He did not look at me. He looked only at his wife. Eleanor, he said, his voice like ice. We are leaving. She stood up, her movements robotic. She did not look at me again. She simply followed her husband, a ghost in a designer dress. He walked her out of the hotel and into their waiting car. He did not get in with her. He told the driver something, and the car pulled away. Then he turned and walked back into the hotel. He walked directly to my table. He stood over me, his presence imposing. I thought he was going to yell at me. I thought he was going to blame me. But he did not. He pulled out the chair his wife had just vacated and sat down. He looked me directly in the eye. His gaze was intense, searching. Tell me everything, he said, his voice low and dangerous. From the beginning. And so I did. I told him about the credit card charge. I told him about the late-night phone calls. I told him about the email. I told him about finding them in the lobby. And then I took out my phone. I showed him the pictures. The bank statements. The transfers. The picture of the necklace in Jenna's suitcase. I laid out the entirety of his son's betrayal, piece by damning piece. He looked at each picture without a word. His face was unreadable. When I was finished, he was silent for a long time. The only sound was the clinking of glasses from the bar. Finally, he spoke. My son is a fool, he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. A weak, pathetic fool. He looked up from the phone, his eyes meeting mine. And he is no longer my son. The finality in his voice was chilling. This was not the anger of a wounded father. This was the cold, dispassionate judgment of a businessman cutting his losses. Mark was a bad investment, a failed project, and he was being liquidated. What will you do? I asked. I will do what is necessary, he said. I will protect my company. I will protect my name. And I will see to it that he pays back every single cent he has stolen. With interest, he stood up. You will be hearing from my lawyer. He will handle the divorce. Send him the bill. I will cover all of it, he paused, looking down at me. You are a formidable woman, Clara. He never deserved you. And with that, he turned and walked away. I watched him go. I felt a sense of closure. It was a brutal, ugly ending. But it was an ending. The Davisons would handle Mark. They would dismantle his life with the same ruthless efficiency they used to build their empire. My part in it was over. Just as I was about to leave, Emily arrived. She rushed into the lobby, her face pale with worry. She saw me and ran over. "Clara, what happened?" "I saw my parents leaving. Mom was crying. Dad looked. I have never seen him look like that." "It is over, Emily," I said. "Everything is out in the open." "Mark?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Where is he?" "He is upstairs," I said. "In room 412. Or he was." I did not need to give her the details. She would find out soon enough. "I am so sorry, Clara," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I am so sorry he did this to you." "It is not your fault," I said. "You are not responsible for your brother's choices." She hugged me, a quick, desperate embrace. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. "I am going to go home," I said. "To my home. And I am going to start over." I left her there, in the lobby of the hotel that had become the stage for the end of my marriage. As I walked out into the cool night air, I felt a lightness I had not felt in years. The weight of the lies, the burden of the secrets, it was all gone. I was free. It was a painful, brutal, and costly freedom, but it was mine. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers and paperwork. Mr. Davison was true to his word. His lawyer was the best in the city. He handled everything. Mark did not fight the divorce. He could not. He had no leverage, no resources, and no allies. His parents had cut him off completely. They had fired him from the company. They had taken back the car. They had initiated legal proceedings to reclaim the money he had stolen. He was ruined, socially, professionally, and financially. He tried to contact me once. He called me, his voice a desperate, broken thing. He cried. He begged. He apologized. He told me he loved me. He told me he had made a terrible mistake. I listened to him for a few minutes, my heart a cold, still stone in my chest. Then I said the only thing that mattered. "Goodbye, Mark," and I hung up. I blocked his number. I blocked him on social media. I erased him from my life as completely as his father had erased him from the family business. Jenna disappeared. I heard through the grapevine that she had been fired immediately. The diamond necklace was returned. Her consulting fees were being clawed back as part of the legal action against Mark. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star, and now she was paying the price. I felt no pity for her. She had been a willing participant in his deception.
She had known about me.
She had known about the money. She had made her choices. Now, she had to live with them. Emily called me a few times just to check in. She told me that Mark was a ghost. He had lost everything. He was staying on a friend's couch, trying to find a job. No one would hire him. His father had made sure of that. The Davison name, which had once been his greatest asset, was now his greatest liability. It was a brand, and he had tarnished it. The family had closed ranks, protecting the brand at all costs. Mark was an acceptable loss. "He blames you, you know," Emily said during one of our calls. Her voice was sad. "I know," I said. "It is easier than blaming himself." "He does not understand," she said. "He thinks you were cruel. He does not see that he gave you no other choice. He pushed you until you had to push back." "It does not matter what he thinks anymore," I said. "It only matters what I do now." And what I did was rebuild. I sold the house that his father had helped us buy. I used my share of the money to put a down payment on a small apartment in a different part of the city. A place that was all mine. It was smaller, less grand. But it was real. It was honest. It was a home, not a stage. I went back to my old career in graphic design. A career I had put on hold to be the supportive wife. I started taking on freelance projects. I was good at it. I had forgotten how much I loved it. How much of myself I had lost in that marriage. I saw Sarah often. We would have dinner, go for walks, and talk for hours. She had been my rock through it all. She had never judged me. She had only ever supported me. "I am proud of you," she told me one evening, as we sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sunset. You took a terrible situation and you found your power in it. I did not feel powerful, I admitted. I just felt
Cornered.
and angry. Sometimes that is what power feels like, she said. It is not always a roar. Sometimes it is a quiet click of a door you were not supposed to open. Her words stayed with me. She was right. My revenge had not been loud or dramatic. It had been quiet. It had been precise. It had been a series of small, calculated moves that led to a devastating checkmate. I had not destroyed Mark's life. I had simply held up a mirror and forced him to look at the life he had built for himself. The collapse was all his own doing. Months passed.
The seasons changed.
I settled into my new life. I was happy, genuinely happy. It was a quiet, steady happiness, not the fragile, performative kind I had known with Mark. I was my own person. I paid my own bills. I made my own choices. I was accountable only to myself. The memory of Mark and what he had done began to fade. It was no longer a raw wound. It was a scar, a reminder of a lesson learned, a reminder of my own strength. One day, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but something made me. Hello, I said. Clara? The voice was hesitant, familiar. It was Eleanor Davison. Hello, Eleanor, I said, my voice cool. We had not spoken since that night in the hotel lobby. I know you have no reason to speak to me, she said, her voice strained. But I wanted to apologize. I was silent. I did not know what to say. I am sorry for the part one played in all of this, she continued. We put so much pressure on him. We wanted him to be perfect. We did not see who he really was. We did not see you. We saw you as an extension of him, of our family. That was not fair to you. You are your own person, a strong person. And I am sorry we did not appreciate you when we had the chance. Her apology was unexpected. It was also, I realized, about her own grief. It was her way of processing the loss of the son she thought she had. Thank you, Eleanor, I said. It was all I could offer.
He is
not well, she said, her voice breaking. He is lost. We are trying to help him from a distance. But he has to find his own way back. I hope he does, I said. And I meant it. I no longer wished him ill. I no longer wished him anything at all. He was a chapter of my life that was closed. We ended the call a few moments later. It was a strange conversation. It did not change anything, but it provided a final, quiet note of closure. The Davisons were dealing with their broken family in their own way, and I was building my new life on my own terms. A year after the divorce was finalized, I was walking through a park near my apartment. It was a beautiful spring day. The sun was warm, and the flowers were in bloom. I was on my way to meet Sarah for lunch. As I rounded a corner, I saw him.
Mark.
He was sitting on a bench, alone. He looked smaller. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. The confident swagger was gone. He was hunched over, staring at the ground. He looked up, and his eyes met mine. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the 20 feet of grass that separated us. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Shame? Regret? I did not know, and I did not care. I gave him a small, polite nod. The kind of nod you give a stranger you pass on the street. And then I kept walking. I did not stop. I did not look back.
He was a part of my past.
And my future was waiting for me. As I walked away, I thought about that night at the hotel. I thought about the keycard in my hand. I thought about the choice I had made. I had not done it for revenge, not really. I had done it for survival. I had done it to reclaim my life, my truth, my self-respect. He had built a prison of lies, for both of us. And I had found the key, not just to his room, but to my own freedom. And as I walked towards my friend, with the sun on my face and a future that was all my own, I knew I had made the right choice. I had not just survived. I had won. And he had not just lost his money or his family. He had lost the power to ever make me feel small again. That was a victory that no amount of money could buy. It was a victory I had earned. And it was a victory I would carry with me every single day for the rest of my new, beautiful, and honest life. The fallout continued in subtle ways. A few months after I saw Mark in the park, I received a wedding invitation. It was from one of Mark's cousins. We had been close, or so I had thought. My name was on the invitation, but it was addressed only to me. There was no +1, it was a clear, if polite, message. I was still connected to the family, but as a single entity. A loose thread from a tapestry that had been rewoven to exclude its most problematic part. I sent a lovely gift and my sincere regrets. I had no desire to attend a family function where I would be the object of pitying glances and whispered conversations. My new life did not have room for that kind of backward-looking drama. Sarah and I took a trip to Italy that summer. It was something we had always talked about doing, but it had never been the right time. With Mark, there was always a reason not to go. A work commitment. A family obligation. A financial concern that, I now realized, was likely a lie to fund his other life. Standing in front of the Colosseum in Rome, I felt a profound sense of liberation. I was standing in a place of ruins, a place where an empire had fallen. It felt fitting. My own small empire, the empire of my marriage, had also fallen. But like Rome, it had left behind a foundation on which something new could be built. While we were in Florence, I received an email from Emily. It was a long, rambling message, full of apologies and explanations. She told me that the family was in turmoil. Her parents were barely speaking. Her father had thrown himself into his work, becoming colder and more distant than ever. Her mother had retreated into a world of charity luncheons and social engagements, her smile brittle, her eyes empty. The perfect family had been exposed as a hollow shell, and they did not know how to put the pieces back together. She also told me more about Mark. He had finally found a job, a low-level sales position at a company that had no connection to his father's world. He was living in a small, rented apartment on the outskirts of the city. He was, she said, a shadow of his former self. He had tried to date, but the story of his spectacular downfall was well known in their social circles. No one wanted to be associated with him. He was a pariah. I know this might sound strange, Emily wrote, but in a way, you saved him.
You forced him to hit rock bottom.
Maybe, from there, he can start to build something real. Something that is actually his. I did not know if I agreed. I had not acted to save Mark. I had acted to save myself. But her perspective was interesting. Perhaps, in the long run, my act of destruction had also been an act of creation. Perhaps his ruin was the only path to his potential redemption. But that was his journey, not mine. I replied to her email with a short, kind message, wishing her well. Then I put my phone away and went to get gelato with Sarah. I was done with the Davisons. I was done with their drama. I was done with their pain. My business continued to grow. I was good at what I did, and my reputation began to spread. I was able to hire a part-time assistant. I moved into a slightly larger apartment with a dedicated office space. I was building a life that was not just stable but successful. A life that was entirely of my own making. The financial security was nice, but the emotional security was even better. I knew that everything I had earned. It could not be taken away from me by someone else's betrayal. About 2 years after the divorce, I was at a networking event for local entrepreneurs. I was talking to a potential client when I saw a familiar face across the room. It was Jenna. She looked different. The confident, ambitious woman I remembered was gone. She looked tired. Her clothes were less expensive. Her hair was less perfect. She was working as a server for the catering company that was handling the event. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. Her eyes widened in panic. She immediately turned and tried to walk back towards the kitchen, hoping I had not seen her. But it was too late. Our eyes had met. I excused myself from my conversation and walked over to her. I did not do it out of malice. I did it out of a strange sense of curiosity. I wanted to see the other person whose life had been so dramatically altered by that night. She flinched when I approached her. She was holding a tray of empty glasses, and it rattled in her hands. "Clara," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I did not know you would be here." "It is a small city," I said, my voice neutral. "Look, I am so sorry," she blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "For everything. I was stupid. I was naive. I believed him. He told me you two were basically separated, that the marriage was over. He promised me everything." I just looked at her. I did not feel anger. I did not feel pity. I just felt nothing. She was a stranger to me, a ghost from a life that was no longer mine. "He promised me everything, too," I said quietly. "Mark is very good at making promises." Tears welled up in her eyes. "He ruined my life," she said, her voice cracking. "I lost my job. I lost my reputation. I had to move back in with my parents. I am still paying off the legal fees from what his father did. He used me and threw me away." "Yes," I said. "That is what he does." I looked at her, at this woman who had been my rival, my enemy. And I saw not a villain, but another victim. A foolish, complicit victim, but a victim nonetheless. "I hope you can rebuild," I said. It was the only thing I could offer her. A small, simple wish for a future that was better than her present. I turned and walked away, leaving her there with her tray of empty glasses and her mountain of regrets. The encounter did not shake me. It did not upset me. It simply confirmed what I already knew. Mark was a black hole. He pulled people in with the gravity of his charm and his promises, and he destroyed them. I was just lucky enough to have escaped his orbit. Life moved on. I started dating again. It was a slow, cautious process. I was not looking for a replacement for Mark. I was not looking for someone to complete me. I was looking for a partner. Someone who was honest. Someone who was kind. Someone who had built their own life, just as I had built mine. I found him, eventually. His name was David. He was an architect. He was quiet and thoughtful, and he made me laugh. He knew my story. I had told him everything, not for sympathy, but for transparency. He had listened without judgment. He had admired my strength. He had not tried to fix me. He had simply loved me for who I was. We got married on a warm autumn day, in a small ceremony, with just our closest friends and family. Sarah was my maid of honor. David's family was warm and welcoming. They were normal. They were not an empire. They were just a family. It was everything I had ever wanted. A real life. A real love. A real future. The past rarely intruded on my new life. But one day it did. I was at the grocery store, in the cereal aisle, when I heard a child's voice. "Daddy, can we get the sugary kind?" I looked up, and there was Mark. He was holding the hand of a small boy, who could not have been more than 4 or 5 years old. He was with a woman. She looked tired, stressed. Mark looked older. There were gray streaks in his hair. His face was lined with a permanent expression of weary resignation. He saw me. The recognition was instant, and so was the fear. He looked like a cornered animal. He pulled the child closer to him, as if to shield him. I just smiled. A small, genuine smile. I was happy. I had a good life. I held no ill will towards him anymore. He was just a man in a grocery store trying to decide on a box of cereal. A man I used to know. I pushed my cart past them. I did not say a word. I did not need to. The final, lingering ghost of my past had been laid to rest. He was no longer a monster in my memory. He was just a man. A man who had made terrible choices. A man who was living with the consequences. My revenge was not the fiery crash of his life. My revenge was the quiet, joyful, and utterly peaceful life I had built in its aftermath. It was the life I was living every single day. And it was a life he could never touch. He could never understand. And he could never, ever have. That was the most complete victory of all.